I'd like to start off. Once again, my name is Ellen, and how did you begin to get interested in science? What motivated you to start working in this field?
Um, I would say what initially triggered my interest was video games. So
Yeah.
I played a lot of video games since I was a kid.
Yeah.
My mom bought me a Nintendo when I was 4. Um, and I switched at some point, maybe in middle school, not completely switched, but added to the games, not just console games, but also PC games.
Yeah.
And when I was maybe 12, a lot of my friends also had PC games, and we wanted to play each other. And that got me, I guess, interested in the internet. And once I had the internet at home, I would browse, and at some point I realized I could right-click on a web page and view source and see the HTML that was used to create that web page.
Oh, yes.
And then that made me more interested. And I think I bought a book on HTML and read it, and started making web pages as practice. And then by the time I got to maybe 12th grade, I found out more about programming just by hearing things. And I bought I bought 2 books on C and C++, and I read them and gave myself some assignments. And I knew I liked math, and from this I enjoyed the programming I was doing, even though there was no formal instruction. It was just from these books. So I decided I wanted to study both. So when I got to college, at this point I didn't really know what doing science was.
Yeah.
I just knew that I liked my math classes, and I knew that I liked this programming that I was learning about. And when I got to college, I started taking classes in both areas as kind of my primary focus. And as a freshman, I was lucky to run into many other freshmen who had more experience with this in high school than I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of, at first, since I didn't know what I was doing, I was just kind of following their lead. And I noticed a lot of these other freshmen were talking to professors and trying to get engaged in research projects. So I did the same thing, not really even knowing what research was. And I think after being exposed to that, I realized that I actually enjoyed it. So now I do research.
Nice. So we have another question to you, especially with not many minorities participating in STEM.
Mm-hmm.
We were going to ask you, how do you think diversity, if at all, is important in science?
Diversity. So why is diversity important in science? I think, well, there are probably many reasons that cause the discrepancy. But I think, at least from my perspective, I do science because I think it's fun. I do computer science and math because I think those are fun. And I think it's important that kind of all segments of the population are exposed and are aware that these opportunities are there, or these endeavors are there, these fields to go into are there. So one answer of many is it's important because it's important that everyone in the population is exposed to the opportunities that are there. Also, there are other reasons, right? You also want to make sure, aside from pure fun and enjoyment of the field, these fields, science, engineering, lead to job creation. They're sources of wealth, and you want to make sure that everyone has access to those opportunities as well. Those are the first couple of reasons that come to mind.
All right. I know that speaking, there isn't much diversity in STEM, and we were going to ask you, especially drawing from your own personal experiences and drawing from your previous answers, what are some challenges you faced while doing your work and participating in science, and how did you get over them?
So you mean kind of challenges I faced as a consequence of the lack of diversity in STEM?
Yes.
I would say I did have, definitely I had challenges, going into STEM. I would say that the biggest challenge I faced, was not related to diversity. It was just, when I entered college, I was very ambitious. I wanted to, take the hardest classes and take lots of classes and, devote a lot of my time to my studies. And I went to a pretty good high school, but I would say that compared to others, so I went to MIT for undergrad, which attracts people from all kinds of backgrounds. Some people went to regular high schools. I would say mine was a pretty good. It had a pretty good academic culture, but it was somewhat of a regular high school, small one. Some people had very extensive experience from high school. They participated in various Olympiads, math Olympiads, and computer science Olympiads. Some of them maybe even worked for companies before during high school, etc. So I was definitely very underexposed, compared to them. So one of the challenges I faced was, I guess, in the very beginning, playing catch up. I also wasn't used to the level of rigor at college compared to high school. High school, I played a lot of games and got my work done during homeroom. College was not like that for me. It was much more challenging. So getting used to that level of rigor was challenging. But the way I overcame it was I didn't look at it as something that I couldn't overcome. I looked at it as another challenge that I like to be challenged, and I found that my fellow peers were a great resource. So these students who had extensive experience were also very generous in my experience. And if I had questions, the professor is usually a very busy person. They might have office hours once a week, but your friends who are your peers are always there. And I would ask my friends, even ones who weren't that close friends, just people who I knew had a lot of experience and knew things. I would ask them lots of questions, and they would answer them. And I would say, by the end of my freshman year, I felt that I had filled in a lot of the gaps that were there. That was very helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like, from what I've heard, your natural curiosity for what you were learning and how you were excited about what you're learning helped you power through these challenges. Mm-hmm. But a lot of kids these days, especially with the difficulties they face in trying to go through school, and I know our classes are very hard, especially right now. Yeah.
Ciphering.
Sorry?
We're ciphering right now.
Yeah. And so what advice do you have for those kids who are losing their natural spark for what they're doing?
Losing their natural spark. At least for me, I guess that's somewhat of a hard question for me to answer because I have enjoyed, very much enjoyed the stuff I'm doing. I would say that, if someone really is not enjoying it, then try, there are many fields within STEM, outside STEM, just explore, see what you enjoy. I think that a lot of these are fun in their own way. Maybe different people find some things more fun than others. But maybe also, talk to peers. I personally, it can be the same activity, like doing research or doing problem sets, etc. I'm a pretty social person, I feel. I don't like to just sit in my room and work on math stuff by myself. I get very bored, even though I enjoy it. Usually, all through university, even now, what I try to do is whenever I'm working, I'll have other friends around me or other colleagues working near me or together. Even research, I think I've never actually published a paper just by myself. I always do research with colleagues, and part of that is because it's a lot more fun that way. So, try and understand your own style. If you're like me and you like to socialize, make your academic pursuits a social activity as well. But everyone has their own style. So.
Did you always want to pursue in the career that you pursue today?
Oh, did I always want to pursue this career? No, I would say so. Now I'm a professor. I'm a faculty member in computer science. When I entered undergrad, so first of all, what do professors do, especially at a place like Harvard, which is a research university? Mm-hmm. So I teach usually one class per semester, but I also do a lot of research and other activities. So what is research? Research is, fundamentally it's discovering new knowledge, right? A lot of the stuff you learn in your classrooms, in your textbooks, someone had to figure out at some point or discover at some point. And oftentimes those are researchers at universities at some point in human history, and that knowledge has eventually made it down to high school textbooks. So I didn't really understand. I mean, I didn't want this career path from the beginning because I didn't really understand what research was in the beginning. When I entered undergrad, I didn't even. I mean, of course, I'd heard of PhDs, but I didn't really understand what a PhD was, what doing a PhD entailed. And I started to slowly get exposed. As I mentioned, I was following the lead of my friends. They were doing research opportunities, so I started looking into them too. And I started to understand kind of more and more. But even then, when you're first starting out, you don't know what the boundaries of knowledge are. Like, what's at the frontier of research? Where can I contribute? I didn't have a good sense of that until later, until I learned more. And I think I really didn't for sure decide until the summer after my senior year. I did an internship at a big software company, which was very nice. They fed us. They had all kinds of activities. And the work was, it was interesting, but I realized that it somehow wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted to do basic research. I wanted to be able to focus on basic questions at the frontier of human knowledge and think about those kinds of questions. And really, I mean, that's research. And so that led me to want to do a PhD. And, toward the end of that, then the question is, then there are several jobs you can go into where you can continue doing research. You can work at an industrial research lab. I interned twice at IBM Research and once at Microsoft Research. In those places, you do basic research in computer science. There are also government research labs. And there's also universities, which is what I ended up going with. And to be honest, I think, for example, these three possibilities are all, great to do research. I ended up choosing to stay in the university system in academia because, I like teaching. I like other aspects of the job, advising students. You have a lot of freedom also when you're in academia. So I guess I didn't really, to answer your question, I decided, to summarize, really decided to go into research summer after senior year, and then I did a one-year master's in applied at that point. And then, actually, I also applied my senior year itself, but I didn't really know what a PhD was, so that didn't really go very well. And then I guess I still, even in the last year of PhD, I still hadn't decided academia versus research labs, and applied to both both jobs. Both kinds of jobs.
10 years from now, with technology expanding, what type of jobs do you think are going to be offered in the computer science field or in the science field in general?
What kinds of jobs?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I haven't really thought too much about that question, so I can try to make things up on the fly. But
Okay.
Definitely. So computer science enrollments have been kind of skyrocketing at most U.S. universities. Like at Harvard, it's very visible. In recent history, some semesters our Intro CS course has been the most enrolled course at Harvard College, which it wasn't, let's say 10 years ago, or even more recent than that. It wasn't. You have lots of not just the number of CS majors is increasing, but also people from outside CS, other majors taking CS courses. And I think people realize that computer science is a fundamental thing. People are appreciating it more. They're realizing that there are a lot of CS jobs, but not only are there a lot of CS jobs, but CS is useful even within other disciplines. So even if you want to do biology, it's useful to know computer science and ideas from computer science. I would say that, of course I'm biased, I'm in computer science, but I would say that I wouldn't be surprised to see even continued growth in CS and computer science. I know even, the White House, I think Barack Obama pushed forward some initiative to, some massive amount of money toward K through 12 computer science education. So I think, even the government is realizing even more. Of course they knew before, but they're realizing even more just how important computer science education is for more people, for the general public.
Yeah. So, because of the importance of computer science and like how it is becoming more and more relevant in this day and age where technology is like expanding so quickly.
Mhm.
How do you think we can bring more kids into technology and become interested in computer science?
That's a good question. I don't know the best way to do that. I know that there are researchers who think about that question, like computer science education. There have been programming languages that have been developed to make it easier for beginners to like come into computer science, for children to come in, like Scratch, things like that.
I've actually used Scratch.
Yes.
So
other things, I mean, I personally have done some of this, outreach of trying to, giving lectures and also teaching courses to high school students. Just I think a week ago, I gave a lecture at some MIT summer program for high school students, where I gave a 1-hour lecture on, how to multiply integers, which everyone learns how to do in lower school, I guess. So when I told the kids that that's what I was going to teach them, they looked at each other like, this guy's a quack or something. But actually, from the computer science perspective, you don't just want. So I study algorithms, and algorithm is just like a method to carry out some task. You don't just want some algorithm or method that works. You usually want an efficient one that takes little time, uses little memory, things like that. So I gave a lecture on how to do integer multiplication faster than how you learned in 3rd grade. So I think this kind of outreach is helpful because I think a lot of people don't realize. I mean, I know I didn't realize like kind of what computer science is, right? Most people, if you tell them about computer science, if you mention computer science to them and ask them like, what is computer science to you? If they haven't been exposed yet, they'll just say programming, maybe like coding, right? And even then, they might not fully understand what coding means, but they'll say that. But actually, to me, it's like saying, well, not quite exactly, but coding is kind of the process by which you implement, ideas from, computer science ideas, right? You code them up, but really, you could teach someone computer science just using a blackboard. The ideas are somehow fundamental beyond the implementation.
Yeah.
And I think exposing people to what those ideas are and giving them a taste of what computer science is really about is a nice thing.
I remember my computer science teacher, and she would say that most people, when you say computer science, they would automatically think working with computers instead of thinking algorithms and like how breaking like a problem down and solving it step by step.
Yeah.
And she would say that like the logic and stuff behind it is the real computer science, and the surface of it is just computers and coding and learning like JavaScript and HTML and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to bring this back one step because we have watched this documentary about art and science and how art can really inspire and drive science. For example, hoverboards maybe, and now they're working on like designing and implementing technology for making real hoverboards, and it would have just been like a fictional story in the past. And how do you think art affects science, and maybe science affects art, if any?
The relationship between art and science, I mean, I know some concrete examples. I don't know if this is getting at the heart of your question. I mean, there are things at the intersection of, say, art and computer science.
Yeah.
You said, I guess, art and science in general, right? But
yeah, you could also include like your video gaming, for example, in the beginning, how that inspired you to be interested in science, because video gaming is like a form of art.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, there are also computer scientists and other scientists as well who kind of have studied art. So, when I was doing my PhD, I had 2 advisors. One of these advisors, his name is Eric Demain, and kind of one of his interests is an area that is called computational origami, right? So, I would say origami. No one would dispute origami's art.
Yeah.
but he and others that he's worked with have worked on kind of designing algorithms that tell you how to fold various how to do folds to create various objects, and there are actually computer science algorithmic questions there. He's even written a book on computational origami. There's science in like high-speed photography. So I've seen this really cool picture once. It was the guy who was behind it was Jeff. I forgot his last name right now. It'll come to me maybe, hopefully. But they shot a gun, and the bullet kind of went through an apple, and you can the high-speed photography, you can see the bullet just as it was leaving the apple, and so I mean, there have been cool things at the intersection of using science to produce interesting art. I guess what you're talking about is kind of the imagination, pre-science imagination, kind of leading to actual engineered devices that we now use, right? Like the Jetsons had flying vehicles. Are we going to have flying vehicles at some point? I think. I mean, definitely some of that happens. You already mentioned hoverboards. They're also, I don't know if I've seen movies or anything, but I feel like I have, where, you can just look at something and maybe do this with your fingers, and then a picture gets taken, or things like that. And I know one of my former suite mates in grad school was working on stuff like that, this pervasive computing, right? So, I mean, definitely, this is more of not art, but, the human imagination leading to interesting products, I guess. But I guess that's how things should go anyway.
Yeah. Were there any mentors as you were getting into your field and stuff like that helped encourage you along the way?
Yeah, I have mentors in my, helping me in my career path. I would say kind of I definitely had people who, I admired their work and kind of was inspired by their research directions. And I did have, at various times I've had kind of formal and informal mentors. So like formal mentors, I had my undergraduate advisor assigned to me by my university. I had a freshman advisor. I had 2 PhD advisors. I did postdocs, and I had postdoc advisors. But also, I mean, my attitude has always been, and there were, many of these who I mentioned. I did a master's. I had a master's advisor. They were all very helpful. I mean, I remember my master's advisor, I think, turned me into a better scientific writer and also presenter, because he really, is very passionate about, of course, the quality of the science, but also the quality of the presentation. That was very helpful to go through that. My PhD advisors were also, helped me a lot. One of them, I essentially shared an office with him during my PhD because he was rarely in his office. I was rarely in mine. We always just kind of sat in the lounge across from each other all day. So I would always talk to him about, things that were going on. But even aside from these formal mentors, I had many informal mentors. Like I would say, when I was a freshman, these friends I told you about who I would ask lots of questions to, that was, even though they were the same age as me, that was somewhat of a mentoring relationship because, they had some knowledge that I didn't have, and then I wanted to learn from them, and I would ask them questions. And I had many, I would say, such kinds of peer mentors throughout undergrad, throughout grad school. And in general, whenever I had questions, I wasn't shy to reach out to whoever I thought could help me, further my own knowledge, and I would just reach out and ask them questions. Even if I didn't know them at all, I would just send them an email. I was never shy about that kind of stuff.
Go ahead.
Were your parents always supportive, when you were figuring out what you want to be?
Oh yeah, my parents. Yeah, definitely. I mean, they're very supportive. Actually, the way I feel like the way I grew up, my parents didn't really talk to me about my career or academics. I mean, I guess they saw I was doing well in school, and they just kind of let me pursue whatever interested me. Maybe if I had been slacking, they would have come down harder on that. But I mean, definitely it was a very loving environment. And as a kid, I think that's, the most important thing is to be home and have, your parents around you who love you, and to have, I also had lots of aunts and uncles and cousins and friends would come over to the house, and in that way, I had I'm very fortunate that I had a very, enjoyable childhood. And I think that was important in just kind of my development as a person. I mean, in terms of career stuff, I mean, neither of my parents do computer science, or they don't do things related to computer science, and they're not really super familiar with computers. I mean, they both have email addresses, but so I never really looked to them for guidance in like that specific in what I specifically do, but I mean, they have guided me just in life.
You said earlier that you saw your obstacles as challenges that you were ready to take on, but were there ever like moments of discouragement, and like if so, how did you overcome it?
Moments of being discouraged.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say there was ever a time when I felt discouraged from doing, STEM or doing math or computer science.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Or like,
I think it's how you. Well, yeah, go ahead.
Or like, sorry, but like, or like the major you wanted to pick, like you said, basic research was your specialty. You felt connection with that. So like, did you ever feel like, what if I don't pick the right choice or anything like that? Because I know college students struggle to pick what majors they want to do when they get older.
Right. I mean, actually, I remember watching some TED Talk at some point about like the paralysis of choice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, once you give someone lots of choices, what kind of cheese do you want on your sandwich? What toppings do you want, etc.
Mm-hmm.
There are all these combinations of what you could choose, and people get paralyzed by the choice and don't know what to choose.
Yeah.
But in my case, actually, I didn't really explore so much. I mean, I was exposed to math or some form of math, math and computer science in high school, this programming I told you about. And then I just kind of I enjoyed it, and I just kind of like committed to it. I didn't ever, when I got to college, I never took courses in other forms of engineering, or, well, there were some required science courses, like one required biology course, one required chemistry course, but I didn't really explore other things. So I feel like the possibility of other choices didn't exist in my mind, so I never felt this paralysis. I mean, I feel like this is true of a lot of things in my life. Like, I only applied to one college, for example. So I was never paralyzed also by like choosing. That's, by the way, not like a good idea. I don't know why I did that. But yeah, I mean, I didn't experience that kind of issue. But what was your first question about being discouraged?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of feelings like that. Often feelings are how you interpret your environment. It's not your environment doesn't make you feel a certain way. It's kind of how you receive your environment. So you could put different people in the same environment, and they'll have different responses. So when I started my freshman year in undergrad, I did in the fall semester, I did like very poorly in my first 2 physics tests. I think I had to like retake the exam, and luckily at that time, maybe it's still that way at my school, freshman fall grades, or actually the entire freshman year grades, were graded like pass no record. So as long as you passed the class, it didn't matter what grade you got. So that took away a lot of the stress. But I think it's definitely a reasonable response, emotional response, to be in that situation where you're doing so poorly on your freshman fall courses and get discouraged, right? That's a normal and I think natural human response. But somehow I just didn't, for whatever reason, I can't really explain why, I didn't really see it that way. I saw it as an opportunity to improve myself. I said to myself, well, clearly there's something I'm not getting about the way I should be going about these exams. I wasn't used to like real like hard problem solving on exams. I was used to more kind of regurgitation of methods that you already did in homework assignments.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of my high school experience. So, I kind of just stopped, looked at the situation, realized I need to train myself better in this. I need to learn more about, X, Y, Z. And then I just spent a lot of time just trying to improve myself. And then, after that, I did better. So I would just say there's no like benefit, at least for me, there was no benefit from this response of being discouraged. You'll just feel worse. I mean, you should go about trying to come up with a more productive response. I mean, part of this is like emotional, right? But you just have to, I guess, train yourself to respond a certain way to various environments.
And I know especially that like high school kids and college kids, that when they finally get a job, when they get out of college, they think that's the end of their life, and that they're set and they achieved everything they wanted. And other people believe that you still keep improving on, and you still keep learning, and you still keep changing. What are your thoughts on this and your personal experiences with this?
Oh, I mean, especially since I'm in research, so my job is to always discover new things, learn new things. Often I take on projects where I don't have like sufficient background to actually execute the project, but then I learn kind of on the fly what I need to learn to do things. But I think this is true even for, and even if you don't go into research, right? If you go into industry and work on various products, you'll always have this. Well, I mean, if you're in, I think, the right environment, doing in a good place, in a good company, on a good team, you'll always have to learn new things to get the new thing done, right? You're always innovating, coming up with new kinds of products, and to do those, to execute and deliver, you'll have to like learn new technologies or learn new, you'll have to learn new things.
Yeah.
Talk to people and learn from them. So, of course, you don't have to put yourself in that environment. You could, there are jobs you could do where you don't have to learn anything new to do your job. I personally would get bored in that environment, but not, to each their own, right? So.
I know you said that school was never like a problem for you. Like you had like a great school. But I was wondering, if the color of your skin ever like, if you had like any trouble of like going to college. Like not a lot of people look like you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, about that, I guess. So first of all, I grew up since age 6 in St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which I don't know the exact statistics, but it's definitely much more than, let's say, 80% black, maybe somewhere between 80 and 90. And it's also a place where kind of all people in positions of power are black. So, the governor is almost always black, the lieutenant governor, the people who hold high positions in government, the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, like kind of looking around, a lot of people were like me, at least ethnically, growing up. And there were people from other ethnicities. There were whites in my school, a noticeable, Indian minority, also people from the Middle East. But I was definitely in the majority group. In the Virgin Islands, in the Caribbean. So growing up, I never had that feeling that I never had the feeling of like kind of low expectations from my environment. People around me, and also the school I was in was also a very like positive academic school. The thing that mattered so much were not sports, but it was the academics. Whenever we had academic competitions, they would live stream it on the PA system, and students who were sitting in their classrooms would like hear what was going on at the competition and like start clapping whenever the quiz bowl team got questions, etc., or like won a match. And then we'd have assemblies where the principal would bring up the academic competitors and like praise them in front of the school. So it was like a very positive environment in that way. Actually, I don't know if you've ever watched the Sidney Poitier movie White Man's Burden. Have you ever seen it? It sort of takes
I've
like
heard of the
you've heard of it?
phrase.
Oh,
The
like-
phrase.
Oh, the phrase. Okay,
Yeah.
the phrase. Yeah, I mean the movie kind of takes kind of the standard American racial stereotypes and sort of like reverses them all.
Mhm.
Just flips it all around. And it's kind of funny. I mean, when I watched that movie, I was like, this is sort of like how I grew up. I mean, but when I came to the States, definitely things were a little different in the States. I mean, I noticed, as soon it was obvious, even when I came to visit day as a senior in high school, it was obvious that there was this kind of racial segregation. Even you would notice, students of one race lived in one dorm versus another dorm. When you saw people sitting at lunch tables, I mean, I guess you're in the greater Boston area, so I don't know if you've witnessed this, but I mean, I just noticed that things were definitely different. To be honest, at first I just thought it was like very weird because it's not the environment I was used to growing up. And actually, to be honest, at first, like a lot of the closest friends I made freshman year were international students, because I just found the whole American stateside environment just a little too weird for me. But somehow I feel like kind of growing up in the kind of environment I did was useful in that it helps. I felt it helps with like just building confidence, etc. To be in an environment where people expect good things from you, etc. Actually, to be honest, I was born in Los Angeles, but we moved there when I was 6, and actually my parents mentioned that when I was a kid. Like they said one of the reasons that we moved there was because they wanted to raise their children in such an environment. So
That's great.
Any like memorable or like one of the most funniest moments in like your journey with computer science?
Memorable or funny?
Yeah.
I mean, one that just comes to my mind right now. I'm sure I could think of more. A lot of funny things have happened to me in my life, but one I can think of that's related to, say, kind of race, ethnicity. I was once at a conference. As you mentioned, kind of the number of, say, black students in studying STEM or computer science in U.S. universities is not like representative of the population of blacks in the United States, right? So that's true even at that's true at the undergrad level, but it becomes even more true like when you move to like even further kind of advanced like to say research further when you get further along in your studies, right? So when you're doing like a PhD, you see even less black faces around you. And when I go to conferences, it's very common that I don't see anyone else around who's also black. So I remember being at a workshop once or a conference, and then someone asked me, are you so and so? And so was like, this professor who's pretty well known, who's Indian. And I was like, and I think in their mind it was like so unexpected maybe to see a black researcher at the CS conference that when they saw me they just assumed I was Indian. I guess it was kind of strange.